Greetings, congregation and friends of First Presbyterian Church. I want you to know how very much I miss all of you, and I look forward to the time when we can be together again. It has been a long season of sheltering at home, hasn't it? And I know it's been a challenge for many of us. I think it's especially a challenge for parents who have kids at home and are trying to help them with their remote learning at the same time doing their own jobs and tending to all that needs to be tended to. So today I wanted to share some resources with you, geared especially towards families, towards parents, but also could be helpful for grandparents. It might be something that you could recommend to your children or grandchildren, or maybe even send them a gift during this time when they're sheltering in place, or just a recommendation. So I'm going to share some resources with you. During this time, we are sort of reclaiming that long Christian tradition of Christian education and faith formation being centered in the home. Recognizing the home and the family as being the first place where children learn the practices of the faith and learn the stories of the faith. And so that's an important part of any family. So I want to share some resources with you. But before I do, I want to show you and tell you a little story about one of my favorite Bibles. So this is a Bible that I use regularly. It's the New Revised Standard Version, and it's just the scriptures. It's not a study edition. It doesn't have extensive footnotes or study guides. I got this Bible about 30 years ago when I was traveling for work, and I needed a Bible that could travel well, that wasn't so big and thick and bulky that I couldn't just put it in my suitcase and it wouldn't take up a lot of space. So that's when I got this Bible. And then when I had young kids, I remember one time I was doing my morning scripture reading and prayer, and Lily must have been at school because I remember Louis sitting next to me and working on a project. He was painting something, and then as this happens, I'm sure many of you parents can identify with this, the paint spilled. It's always something, right? I remember putty getting stuck in Lily's hair, or all kinds of things that we were always cleaning up. But at this particular morning, the paint spilled. And now it's a treasure to me, because when I turn to where that paint spilled, that red paint, I note that it's in John's Gospel. And right here at the beginning of this paint spill is verse 13 of chapter 19. And it says, "When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out and sat at the judge's bench at a place called the Stone Pavement, or in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now it was the day of preparation for the Passover, and it was about noon. And he said to the Jews, 'Here is your king.' And they cried out, 'Away with him, away with him, crucify him.' And then just as this paint, which I think of now as blood, drips down the page, in this next paragraph, is where Jesus is crucified. They went out to the place of the skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. There they crucified him with two others, one on either side, and with Jesus between him." So sometimes the things that can be frustrations as they're happening, because this paint spill certainly interrupted my time of morning devotion and prayer, but now it's a treasure to me. And every time I come to this place in my Bible, I think of those precious moments with my children. But they weren't all precious, so if you want some stories about some challenges, just give me a call and we can go have a cup of coffee and I can share with you some of the more challenging times that I had with my kids. But some of the resources that I want to share with you today are about cultivating faith in your family. And so this one in particular is called Making a Home for Faith. And this was a go-to for me when I was raising my family. It's by Elizabeth Caldwell. It's essentially 100 pages, so it's doable. It's not something that's going to take a ton of your time. You can read a chapter here and there. So I recommend this, Making a Home for Faith by Elizabeth Caldwell. Another one, and this was a more interactive one, this is called Making Time for God, Daily Devotions for Children and Families to Share. So I'm going to hold this up too. This one is by Susan Garrett and Amy Plantinga Powell. And Amy is a professor at Louisville Theological Seminary, one of our Presbyterian seminaries. This was a book that we use very regularly for our family devotions. I think of some of you who have told me that you are all sitting up on mom and dad's bed on Sunday morning or maybe even Sunday afternoon and tuning into our worship. And that reminds me of when my kids would come jumping on our bed and we would do our family devotions in the evening. And this is set up, as many devotionals are, by the day. So each day there's a page, and again, it's just one brief page. There is a scripture at the top. There is some sort of reflection on that, and then a prayer. And so you can use this on the days when it works for your family. And of course, it probably isn't going to work 7 days a week. Trust me on that one. But this was very meaningful for our family, Making Time for God, Daily Devotions. Another book here that I would recommend, Raising Children to Adore God, Instilling a Lifelong Passion for Worship. So this is particularly geared towards worship, and it's by Patrick Kavanaugh and has a foreword by Michael Card, the singer-songwriter Michael Card. So this is called Raising Children to Adore God. And then this is more of just a parenting book, but it was something that I found helpful. It's called Everyday Blessings, The Inner Work of Mindful Parenting. And it's by Mila and John Kabat-Zinn, who also wrote a great book called Wherever You Go, There You Are. And that sort of reminds me about the time that we're in right now, because it seems like as we're sheltering in place, wherever we go, there we are. We're at home. But this one is Everyday Blessings, the Inner Work of Mindful Parenting. So my hope is that as we have been unable to gather physically together for worship, that you will be finding time with your family to have some daily time of worship, of prayer, of scripture reading, because this is truly how these practices of the faith are instilled in our children and stay with them as they grow and develop into the people that God created them to be. If you have any questions or want to talk more about this, please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to have some conversations with you. So I'm going to set these down and then let us close